The lease agreement. Jack Martin was a simple human from Earth. He worked as a mechanic and always wanted peace and quiet. When he got a job on Theralis Prime, a desert planet ruled by strange alien species, he thought it would be easy. Hot weather, less people, and cheap housing. That's all he needed. He stepped off the shuttle with a small backpack and a folded map. The air was dry, the sun was brutal, and sand covered everything. Jack squinted as he searched for the address he was given. After tea, walking for 20 minutes, he finally stopped in front of a strange dome-shaped house made of red stone. The door opened with a loud hiss. A tall, blue-skinned alien female stood there, arms crossed, eyes glowing yellow. "I'm Jira," she said in a deep voice. "You must be the human." "Yes, Jack Martin. I'm here about the room you listed, on Galactic Rent." Jira studied him. "You're smaller than I expected." Jack blinked. Thank you." She turned around and motioned him to follow. The inside of the house was clean, warm, and smelled like hot sand and spices. There were thick rugs, glowing crystal lamps, and a surprising number of worm statues on every shelf. "You will follow 3 rules," Jira said firmly. 1. No loud sounds after sunfall. 2. No pets. 3. Never enter my sacred sand room. Jack nodded quickly. "Got it, no noise, no animals, no sand room." She handed him a key made of bone and metal. "Good. Your room is that way. Kitchen is shared. Water is limited. Bathroom," she paused, "is strange to humans. Adjust." Jack laughed nervously. "I'll manage. Thank you, Miss Jira." "Not Miss, just Jira," she corrected. Jack spent the next few hours setting up his small room. The bed was low to the floor. The walls had moving patterns, like desert wind. He plugged in his translator and took a cold drink from his survival pack. By evening, he was already liking the peace. No noise. No pollution. Just him and the sound of wind over sand. Before bed, he took a shower in the small, alien-style bathroom. The water was thick, slightly blue, but it got the job done. When he stepped out, he had nothing but a towel wrapped around his waist. He walked back to his room quietly, but forgot to lock the bathroom door behind him. Jira, meanwhile, had come to ask him if he wanted a night meal, something made of dried rootworms and heat bread. She walked down the hallway, reached his room and knocked once. Jack turned around, confused, and opened the door halfway. "Yes?" Jira's eyes went wide. Her jaw dropped. Her 4 fingers pointed directly toward his lower body. "What is that?" Jack followed her eyes, and then looked down. "Oh, it's not what it looks like. I just got out of the shower." He stuttered, pulling the towel tighter. But Jira stepped back in shock, eyes filled with fear and awe. That's a mini Shai-Hulud," she gasped. Jack frowned. "A what now?" "The holy desert worm, the god of sand and storms. It's small, but alive. It moves," she shouted. Ma'am, that's just..." Jack started, but it was too late. Jira turned around and shouted toward the hallway. "Come quick! The human carries the sacred worm between his legs." Doors opened. Neighbors peeked out. A few alien kids screamed. Someone dropped a pot. Jack backed into his room and shut the door. "Oh no," he whispered. "What did I just get into?" 10 minutes later, the entire building was buzzing with talk. Jack sat on the edge of his bed, still wrapped in the towel, head in hands. Jira knocked again, her voice calmer this time. "Human, Jack, the temple must know of this. You may be the one from the prophecy." Jack opened the door just a little. "What prophecy?" She bowed her head. "The one that says, when the sacred worm appears on 2 legs carried by an outsider, he shall bring balance to the shifting sands." Jack stared at her. "You think I'm some kind of desert messiah? Because of my..." Jira nodded, slowly. He groaned. "I just wanted cheap rent. Sacred myths and misunderstandings." Jack didn't sleep that night. He lay on his alien-style bed, listening to whispers outside his door. Every few minutes someone would walk past and mutter words in a language he didn't understand. Some giggled, some sounded shocked, others sounded like they were praying, all because of one stupid moment, with just a towel and bad timing. Tirli. Next morning, Jack woke up to find his door marked with a strange symbol. It glowed faintly like desert fire. Someone had painted it using glowing sand. He opened the door slowly, and standing there were 3 hooded aliens. Their robes were golden and red. Their faces were hidden behind carved stone masks. One of them carried a staff shaped like a curled worm. Behind them, Jira stood tall and serious. "Jack Martin of Earth," she said. "The high priests of the Sandwich Temple have come to see you." Jack blinked. "Wait, Sandwich Temple? Like a sandwich?" She frowned. "Sandwich, the ancient religion of the Worm Lords. Right." The hooded aliens stepped forward and dropped to their knees. One of them said in a deep, crackling voice, "We have waited 3,000 rotations for this day. The worm bearer has returned." Jack laughed nervously. "Okay, whoa, time out. I'm not a bearer of any worms, listen, it's just human biology." Jira turned to the priests. "He is modest." The signs were clear. "He carries the living symbol between his legs." Jack groaned. "Why does that sound worse every time someone says it?" The lead priest touched Jack's arm gently. "You must come with us. There is a test." Jack crossed his arms. "What kind of test?" The priest replied, "We must confirm whether the holy worm truly resides with you." Jack turned red. "Absolutely not." Jira raised an eyebrow. "Then you must at least visit the Great Sand Temple. The seer will know the truth." Jack sighed. "Do I get breakfast first?" Jira blinked. "You may have boiled rootworm and spice mud. I'll skip breakfast." An hour later, Jack found himself sitting in the back of a glowing sand skimmer, speeding through the dunes outside the city. Beside him sat Jira, still serious. The priest sat in front, chanting softly. The desert stretched forever. Giant bones poked out of the sand, once living worms now fossilized. The heat shimmered in the air. Jira spoke. "There is a legend, Jack. A human-like creature would appear, one with the living worm, a sign of renewal. He would bring new knowledge, strange tools and strange thoughts." Jack shrugged. "That sounds like any human." She looked at him carefully. "No, not just any human. One brave enough to show his worm to a landlady." Jack groaned. "I didn't mean to." Jira smirked. "But you did. And now you must finish what you started." They arrived at the Great Sand Temple. It was built into the side of a dune with massive statues of worms curled around the entrance. Inside it was cool, dark and filled with symbols Jack couldn't read. Torches lit the path as they walked down a long hall. Strange murals lined the walls. Some even showed 2-legged figures with glowing... Well, Jack didn't want to say it out loud. Finally, they entered the chamber of the seer. An old alien covered in layers of golden cloth sat on a floating platform. Her eyes were fully white, glowing faintly. Jira stepped forward. "Great seer, we bring you the human. He may be the worm bearer." The seer floated closer to Jack. She sniffed the air, then circled him once. "I see the signs," she whispered. "His heart beats like thunder, his path is twisted. His worm lives." Jack muttered, "Please stop calling it that." The seer reached out and pressed her fingers to his forehead. Suddenly, Jack's vision filled with sandstorms, roaring worms, and ancient cities falling. Then it stopped. Jack gasped and dropped to his knees. "What was that?" The seer smiled. "You saw the past and your future. You are not just a visitor. You are part of the prophecy." Jira placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "You must accept it now." Jack looked up, wide-eyed. "I just came here to rent a cheap room. Now you people are telling me I'm some kind of worm messiah with a glowing future?" The seer leaned in and whispered, "Your destiny begins now, worm bearer." Jack sighed deeply. "This planet is insane. Worship or war?" Jack didn't want to be a religious symbol. He wanted coffee, a quiet job, maybe a little peace. What he didn't want was a fan club of chanting aliens praising his anatomy. But now, that's exactly what he had. The next morning, he opened the curtains of his little rental room to find more than 50 desert aliens standing outside the building, holding worm statues, singing something in a deep, slow voice. He closed the curtain again. "Jira," he said, walking into the hallway. "Why are people worshipping outside my window?" She sipped her cup of lava root tea. "They believe you are the physical link between flesh and sand. You carry the sacred sign." Jack crossed his arms. "Yeah? Well, the sacred sign needs a break." But Jira's expression turned serious. "There's a bigger problem. Not everyone believes you're the true worm bearer. The Scorchfang tribe thinks you are a fraud." "Let me guess," Jack muttered. "They don't like humans?" "They don't like competition," she said darkly. "To them, only a Scorchfang can awaken the Sandlords. If you're real, their power will end." Jack sat down slowly. "So what happens now?" Jira didn't blink. "They've declared a holy duel. You must face their champion in the trial of proof." Jack laughed nervously. "That sounds like something I definitely won't survive." Jira looked at him with a strange softness. "You might, if you stop thinking like a human." By afternoon, they arrived at the trial grounds, an ancient arena carved from desert stone. Wind howled through the broken pillars. In the center stood a massive pit of golden sand. On one side stood Jack, shirtless, sweating, holding a wooden staff. On the other side was a monster. The Scorchfang champion was 7 feet tall, wearing armor made of worm bone and fire glass. His eyes glowed red. His voice echoed as he raised a clawed fist. "I do not believe in the flesh worm you carry, human. You are no chosen one. Just a soft outsider," Jack mumbled under his breath. "Why does everyone talk about me like I'm a walking sausage?" Jira stood on the edge of the arena. "Remember, Jack, you don't need to fight like them. You need to think different." The gong rang. The champion charged. Jack panicked and threw sand into the alien's face. It actually worked. The alien stumbled back, growling. Jack ran behind a broken pillar and tried to breathe. He wasn't a warrior. He fixed ships. He knew how to rewire engines, not fight desert monsters. Then he remembered something. Heat sensors. Desert predators hunted by sensing body heat. If he could fake it, he took off his wristband and threw it into the sand. It beeped, glowing slightly. The champion pounced toward it, thinking it was Jack. Wrong move. Jack swung the wooden staff like a baseball bat and cracked it right across. The alien's head, the crowd gasped. The champion fell. Silence. Then, wild cheering. Jira ran down to him, eyes wide. "You did it, you used your mind." Jack smiled, panting. "I'm a mechanic. I fix problems." The Scorchfang elders bowed from the audience stands. Their leader stood up and declared, "The human fights like no desert-born. Perhaps he is the sign." That night, a secret meeting was held in the old sand temple. Jack sat on a stone bench while tribal leaders, priests, and scholars argued. Some believed he was the worm bearer. Others thought it was a trick. A few wanted to dissect him to find out. Jack stood up. "I don't want to be your god or your enemy. I'm just a guy, but I didn't cheat in that arena. I didn't fake your vision. Maybe that means something." Jira looked at him. "You didn't come here to change our world, but you already have." Just then, a tremor shook the temple floor. Dust fell from the ceiling. One priest whispered, "An awakening." A second tremor followed. Jack's chest suddenly glowed. The crystal from the Sears test, hidden under his skin, burned with light. The floor cracked open slightly. From beneath came the low, thunderous growl of something ancient. Jira grabbed his arm. "Jack, something is waking up, something that's been asleep for thousands of years." Cliffhanger. A deep voice echoed from below the earth. "Worm bearer, we know you." The worm test. The earth didn't stop shaking. Dust rained from the ceiling of the temple. Cracks ran along the stone floor like spider webs. Everyone froze. Even the priests who spent their lives chanting and pretending to be calm now looked truly afraid. Jack looked down at his chest. The strange crystal embedded in his skin was pulsing with heat, bright enough to glow through his shirt. "What's happening?" he asked, voice tight. Jira grabbed his arm. "You woke something, Jack. Something old." Just then, the ground split open near the altar. A great gust of hot air burst upward, followed by the sound no one wanted to hear, the sand moving beneath the stone. One of the elders gasped. "It can't be." From below, a booming voice echoed through every wall and bone. "The bearer of the worm heart has been chosen. Let the trial of bonding begin." The priests dropped to their knees. One whispered, "It is the voice of the Deep One." Shira turned to Jack. "You must go below. The great worm has called you." Jack raised both hands. "Now hold on. You mean go into the crack in the floor?" "Why?" "The trial of bonding," she said, "is sacred. If you survive, you become one with the worm. If you fail, the sands claim you." Jack stared at the opening. It wasn't just a crack now, it was a tunnel. A glowing, hot, deep tunnel lined with shimmering crystal walls. He took a deep breath. This better not be some alien prank show. The tunnel was tight and twisted. Jack crawled for what felt like hours. Heat came from every direction. His shirt stuck to his back. The crystal in his chest glowed brighter the deeper he went. Then he dropped into an enormous underground cavern. The walls shimmered with bioluminescent worms. Strange fungus glowed purple. Pools of hot liquid bubbled near the edges. But it was the center that froze him. A giant eye stared at him. Buried beneath half the sand was a living god, a shy hulud. Hundreds of meters long, skin like burning stone, teeth the size of buildings, and somehow, even though it had no lips, it spoke. So, this is the human. Jack fell to his knees. "Okay, I'll just be honest. I didn't sign up for this. You carry the worm heart. You passed the surface trials, but to bond with me, you must not prove strength." Jack blinked. "Then what?" "You must prove understanding." Suddenly the worm's body shifted. 1,000 voices filled the cavern. Memories, echoes, images from forgotten times. Jack saw alien wars, dead worlds, and humans standing beside worms long before recorded time. He saw a human touch the forehead of a worm and make it stop a tidal wave. He saw a worm cry. Yes, cry, emotion. The voice spoke again. "We are not gods. We are guardians. Long ago humans helped us. Then they forgot us. Will you remember again?" Jack, speechless, placed a hand on the sand. I don't know how. But I can try." A rumble. The worm lifted its massive head, and then gently lowered its snout to Jack. "Then take my mark." Suddenly, the worm touched its nose to Jack's chest, and the crystal inside him exploded with light. Symbols burned across his skin. Strange glyphs like worm tracks in sand formed along his arms and neck. Pain seared his veins. Jack screamed, and then silence. He woke up outside the temple, lying in the sand. Jira knelt beside him, her face pale. "You stopped breathing," she whispered. "We thought you were dead." Jack sat up slowly. "I'm not?" She shook her head. "No. You're more alive than ever." The priests surrounded him. The elders stared with wide eyes. One whispered, "He carries the mark of the buried king." Another said, "He didn't just pass the trial, he merged." Jack looked at his hands, still glowing faintly. "I think I felt the worm's heart beating inside mine." Jira helped him stand. "Then you're no longer just the worm bearer." He looked at her. "Then what am I?" She smiled. "You are the worm bonded. And now the tribes must decide, follow You, or fight you. Jack stared into the desert sun. I came for a cheap place to sleep. Now I'm bonded to a sand monster, glowing like a light bulb, and possibly about to start a war. Jira's smile faded. Yes, and you've never looked more like a leader. Cliffhanger. Far away, the Scorchfang war drums began to beat. A massive army gathered on the dunes, and they were marching straight toward the city. A gift or a curse? Jack didn't sleep, not because of the war drums echoing across the dunes, not even because the tribes were gathering to kill him. No, Jack didn't sleep because something was moving inside him. Since the worm had marked him, he could feel the desert like it was part of his own skin. When a beetle crawled across the sand a mile away, he felt it. When the wind changed direction, he knew. And when someone stepped on the earth with rage in their heart, it burned in his chest. He stood outside the temple, bare feet on the sand, eyes closed. Jira approached quietly. You've been standing there for 3 hours. Jack didn't move. I can hear them, thousands of them. Their armor scrapes against bone. Their breath smells of firegrass. They want war. Jira placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we fight. No, Jack whispered. We survive. Inside, the temple hall, the elders gathered. The Scorchfang army had sent a final message. Surrender the false worm bearer, or face extinction. The high priest looked at Jack. What do you plan to do, human? Jack replied calmly. They want to fight an old war. I want to show them a new future. He stepped forward and pulled a strange device from his belt. Earth tech. A mini projector. He tossed it in the air and a 3D hologram appeared, showing a sandworm moving through ancient tunnels with humans walking beside it. This isn't your first time with us, Jack said. Your ancestors and mine once worked together. The worms knew us, trusted us. Somewhere that trust was lost. I came here by accident, but now I carry something old, something powerful. The elders remained silent. Jack added, I don't want to be your god, but I will be your shield. The next day, preparations began. Not for war, but for a defense the Scorchfangs would never expect. Jack used his knowledge of Earth technology to create sand traps, vibration decoys, and sonic mirrors. He taught the younger aliens how to mislead. Thermal trackers, how to hide heat signatures, and how to move without leaving tracks. Jira watched him in amazement. You act like a soldier, she said. I'm not, Jack replied. But I've seen enough war to hate it. She looked at him quietly. You're not just the worm bonded, you're different, Jack chuckled. Is that your way of saying I'm weird? Jira stepped closer. No, that's my way of saying, I'm glad you rented my room. They stood silently for a moment, the heat of the setting sun casting a golden glow across the sand. Then the sky thundered. Jack turned sharply. They're here. From the highest dune, the Scorchfang army marched, rows of armored beasts, giant sand lizards dragging siege towers, and tribal warriors shouting ancient war songs. But Jack didn't run. He stepped forward, closed his eyes, and called. The desert pulsed. Beneath the feet of the invaders, the sand shifted. Whispers echoed through the dunes. And then, a worm answered. A massive shadow slid beneath the army like a swimming mountain. Soldiers screamed as the ground swallowed. Machines whole. The Scorchfang commander shouted orders, but too late. Jack opened his eyes. They glowed faintly gold. He wasn't controlling the worm, he was speaking to it. And the worm listened. After hours of chaos, dust, and roars, silence fell. Not one Scorchfang had died, but none had reached the city. Instead, they had dropped their weapons and fled, terrified by a force they couldn't understand. The worm had risen once, just once, above the dunes. It hadn't attacked. It had simply shown itself, enough to remind them. The desert had a guardian now. That night, the people gathered at the temple. Jack stood on the steps, unsure of what to say. Jira stepped beside him. They're waiting. Jack raised his hand. I'm not your king, I'm not your god, I'm not your enemy, I'm just a man who listened to something deep beneath your feet. He placed a hand over his heart. This isn't a weapon. It's a voice. One that says, peace is stronger than pride. The crowd was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon the entire temple shook with cheers. Later, under the stars, Jira sat beside him near the fire. You changed everything, she said, softly. Jack smiled. No, we did. You gave me a chance when everyone else ran away screaming. She looked at him with strange warmth. I was scared too, but not of you. Then what? Jira hesitated, then whispered, I was scared of how much I wanted you to stay. Jack looked into her golden eyes, silent for a moment. Then he replied, I'm not going anywhere. Cliffhanger. Far beneath the sand, the great worm stirred again, this time not in warning, but in invitation. Something else was coming. The human strategy. Jack stood at the edge of the cliff, looking over the cracked dunes. Wind howled like a wounded beast. The sand was not silent tonight. It carried voices, angry ones. The Scorchfang army hadn't given up. They were not running anymore. They were regrouping, but something was different this time. They've brought skyships, said Jira, landing beside him with her desert glider. And outsiders, hired mercenaries from other worlds. Jack narrowed his eyes. In the distance, dark clouds floated, ships that weren't from Theralis. Ships that didn't care about worms, gods, or prophecies. Only money. And death. They're preparing for a full assault, Jira continued. Even the worms can't stop airstrikes. Jack clenched his fists. Then we won't just defend. He turned to her, eyes glowing gold again. We'll outthink them. Inside the temple, Jack unrolled an ancient sand map on the floor and placed a glowing stone at its center. His fingers moved fast as he scribbled with a piece of bone charcoal, combining earth tactics with desert survival knowledge. He pointed to 3 key spots here. We'll fake a retreat. This spot we bury sonic mines, and here, we guide the sandworm. Jira tilted her head. You want to trick them into attacking the wrong places? Jack smirked. Exactly. No direct battle, just controlled chaos. I'll let them win until they've already lost. The elders watched in silence. One of them leaned forward. No warrior ever thought like this. Jack smiled faintly. That's because I'm not a warrior. I'm human. The next day, the plan began. The desert city seemed abandoned. Flags were pulled down, tents collapsed. Tracks led into the open sands. Spies reported back to the Scorchfang general. They're fleeing. The worm bearer has run. But it was a lie. Jack was still there, hidden beneath the sands, listening to every footstep above through his worm link. The enemy entered the city ruins at sunset. The Scorchfang commander stepped on a glowing rune. He smirked. These humans are cowards. Then everything changed. Booming vibrations erupted from below. Sonic mirrors activated. Sound bounced in unnatural directions. Confusion spread like wildfire. Soldiers couldn't hear commands. Machines malfunctioned, and then the sand moved. The worm didn't rise this time. It circled beneath the army, cutting them off from each other like a living wall. Jack and his team of desert allies emerged from hidden tunnels, targeting only the supply lines and engines. No blood, no glory. Just strategy. In the chaos, Jack slipped into the enemy command ship, alone. He found the mercenary leader, a tall alien with steel skin and 6 eyes, sitting on a throne of bones. You're the famous worm bearer, he growled. You came to die? Jack smiled coldly. No, I came to make you listen. He tossed a small cube onto the floor. It projected a live image, a massive worm circling the ship. See that? Jack said. You fire once. This whole canyon collapses. Your ship won't survive the tremor. The alien frowned. Are you threatening me? No, Jack said. I'm offering you something better than a paycheck. A way out. He pointed to the screen again. Pull your forces out. Take your credits. Leave this world. The alien hesitated, then the ship rumbled slightly. The worm was getting closer. The mercenary stood up. You're not a soldier, but you're dangerous. Jack turned to leave. No, I'm human, that's worse. By morning, the Scorchfang army was gone. The mercenaries left the atmosphere. The war had ended without a full battle. Jack stood in the center of the city as people emerged from hiding. The children cheered. The elders whispered. The worms stayed silent, watching from beneath. Jira approached him with slow steps. You didn't win with weapons, she said. Jack looked at the horizon. That's not how humans win. We win with ideas. She smiled, then handed him something wrapped in silk. What's this? He asked. A gift, she said. From me. He unwrapped it carefully and stared. It was a small pendant, shaped like a tiny worm, curled around a human heart. This is your mark, she said. Not the one on your skin, the one in our history. Cliffhanger. Far beneath the deepest dune, a new voice stirred, a younger worm, one that had never spoken before. Worm-bearer, father of the next age, we await. The landlady's confession. The war was over. The dunes were quiet now. No drums, no marching feet, no skyships. The worms had returned to their deep tunnels. The city stood whole. But something had changed in the air. It wasn't just peace. It was expectation. The people now looked at Jack not as an outsider, but as something more. A leader, a legend, a living bridge between their world and his. But Jack was packing his bag. He stood in his rented room, the same one where this entire madness had started. The key still hung on the hook. The strange alien smell of desert spices still filled the air, but it didn't feel like home. Not anymore. He sighed and zipped the bag shut. Then the door creaked open. Jira stood there, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. So, she said, the great worm-bearer is running away. Jack chuckled. I'm leaving, not running. There's a difference. She stepped closer. Is there? He turned to her. Jira, I didn't come here to become someone's savior. I didn't ask for glowing crystals in my chest or telepathic worms. I just needed a cheap place to stay. Her voice softened. And yet, you stayed longer than anyone expected. Jack paused. Only because you didn't throw me out. Jira smiled faintly. I nearly did, when I saw you in that towel. Jack laughed. Yeah, that moment cursed my whole life. She looked down, her expression turning serious. Or maybe it saved ours. They stood in silence for a moment. The desert wind rattled the shutters. Then Jira walked to the small table and placed something on it, a bowl of burning herbs. The smoke curled in strange shapes. This is a truth fire, she said. We use it during bonding ceremonies. Jack raised an eyebrow. Is this your way of confessing something? Jira met his eyes. Yes. She took a deep breath. When you came here, I didn't trust you. Humans are loud, chaotic, and unpredictable. But then, you listened. You fought. But only when you had to. You protected us without demanding anything. And when you had the chance to rule, you chose peace. She stepped closer. You weren't just my tenant, Jack. You became my reason to believe in something better. Jack's throat tightened. Jira. She reached out and gently touched the crystal on his chest, still faintly glowing. This gift inside you, yes, it came from the worm, but the strength, the wisdom, came from you. He placed his hand over hers. And everything I had left on Earth, it doesn't matter anymore. Because the moment you shouted about my mini Shai-Hulud, my whole life changed. Jira chuckled. Still the worst first impression ever. Jack nodded. And somehow, still my best memory. The fire flickered. Jira leaned in slightly, her voice barely a whisper. There is one more tradition. Jack tilted his head. Do I need to fight another worm? No, she said softly. You need to answer one question. She looked into his eyes and asked, Will you stay? Not as a savior, not as a symbol, but as mine? Jack didn't blink. He took a breath and answered with a single word. Yes. The next day, the people gathered in the temple once more. But it wasn't for war. It wasn't for politics. It was for something older. A bonding. Jack wore robes of sun thread and bone silk. Jira wore the desert's finest crystals and a headband shaped like a rising worm. They stood together, hands joined, as the great worm's shadow passed silently across the dunes. The priest declared, 2 paths become one. 2 lives merge. The landlady and the stranger now walk the same trail. As they returned to their home that night, Jack paused in the doorway looking around. I guess I'm not your tenant anymore. Jira smiled. No, now you're just mine. He stepped inside and shut the door.